Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation. And my guests are Jessica and Dr. Jeff. Jessica Simonetti is a Pilates teacher with a degree in nutrition and the founder of Passion and Pilates. Dr. Jeff Karp is the author of Lit Life Ignition Tools, Use Nature's Playbook to Energize Your Brain, Spark Ideas, and Ignite Action. Okay, Jeff is a lot more than this, so the full bio will be at the end. For both of you, will be at the end of this video. The question that I love asking from the get-go, and Jeff, we met before, so you're probably familiar if you remember that question. I usually introduce my guests briefly, but my favorite question is how they see themselves. So how would you introduce yourself? Who is Jessica and who is Jeff? In your own words, in this very moment.
Jessica is someone that it's just a work in progress. Just somebody that wakes up every day. I am thankful to have another day to learn, to experience, and ultimately to simply experience, because through experience is how we grow and how we learn. That's about as deep as I can go with it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you. Yes. Jeff, who are you, Jeff? Or what are you?
Wow. I love what Jessica just said. And for me, I would say I'm someone who's just, Jeff is just curious about everything, curious about the world, and life, tinker, especially with, experimenting with all kinds of different strategies and tools and rituals and practices, and very curious about other ways of being and different, and just how profoundly it can be that, like, just experiencing a different mindset can change everything. And so I, just passionate in self-exploration, and then also in innovation as well, and sort of taking the insights that I've gained in my life and solving challenges or problems in all sorts of places.
Yes. What's not to love about that? I love what you said, Jessica, about being grateful. Yes, that's a big one, isn't it? Just for the fact that we are here, that we are having this conversation, that we are alive. That's a big one.
Exactly. I feel it doesn't even have to get deeper than that. We're having this experience right here, and I feel that there's absolutely no doubt that, we're the three participants right here, and we're going to be changed and impacted in some way because of this experience that we're having together.
Yes, beautifully said. Yes, a billion times to that. It's always the case here. You always leave a perfume, of wisdom or love or something in me. It's beautiful. And Jeff, what's not to love about curiosity? Yes, always trying to being open, to whatever it is, being present and open, and find the solutions for problems. It seems like it's the only, in a way, if there is a reason, a purpose, it would be that one, to solve problems. In a way, we create problems here in this experience called life. And then we also have the tools to solve the problems. And we do have the tools, which is very interesting, that life gives both, right? The problem and the solution. So it's up to us to be open and curious to find them or to apply them.
Yeah, I guess even just building on that, if we look at nature, for example, and in nature, it's all about, there can be all sorts of perturbations, right? So there can be a hurricane, or a volcano erupts, or an earthquake, or a meteor, or a fire, or drought. And then, nature has this resilience, this adaptability, this interconnectedness. And I don't know if nature really thinks of it as solving problems per se, and probably there's a good reframe in there for all of us. But more, it's kind of a combination of survival and thriving, and through all the adaptation and interconnectedness, and there's always perturbations. And I think in our personal lives as well, it's like our environments are always constantly changing. Not just the weather, although that is, something important, but also the people we interact with, and, sort of what's happening at work or in our personal lives, in our relationships, even just the food we eat, the sleep we're getting, the exercise, our connection with other people. It's always like, I kind of see it almost everything is like a pendulum, right? So it's going back and forth.
Yes.
And so we're constantly being sort of exposed to these perturbations. And so we have all this adaptation that we have built into our wiring and our DNA, and, just into every cell and every molecule in our body. And so it's
Yeah. So the topic is integrating Pilates with mind-body themes, unlocking the connection between movement and life ignition tools, LIT. That's a book that Jeff wrote. So before we get into this topic, I want to ask you both this question. What is to be healthy? What is to be a healthy person, Jessica? I'll ask you.
I think number one, it's feeling clarity in your mind. I think maybe that for me is really the biggest piece. I feel without having clarity and a sense of peace in my mind, peace of mind, then I can't even visit the other pieces. So, that is a constant, I think, work in progress. I find that, when we get to that place that we're like, I feel almost like I'm coasting, like I could fly. The next piece of learning, the next challenge presents itself. And I feel, at least for myself, that's kind of been the experience that I've had. It's like you get little moments, little bursts of times where you feel that you could fly, that you are coasting, until you're presented with your next lesson, your next opportunity for learning. And I also feel that we are here to learn. So it's a gift to be presented with lesson after lesson and opportunity after opportunity, because growth is what it's truly all about, in my opinion.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Beautifully said. I love the concept of clarity, inner peace in learning, right? And the question that comes to mind is, from your experience, what led you to these states of being clear and at peace?
Well, I've been thinking about this recently. I do think that I know the moment, or what was the time in my life that led me to begin to have a sense of awareness, because I clearly in my mind can see like two parts of my life. The part that I really was eyes totally closed. And then that moment where I started to have a small opening of the eyes. And then I'd say from that point on, it's just been a little bit more and a little bit more. And, I like to say maybe my eyes are opened like 5% now. And I have
Yes,
eternity to go on. It was actually the first fitness studio that I worked in. And it was run by a couple. And they truly inspired me. And so many of the things that they said to me, I didn't even quite understand at the time. And I even remember thinking, I'm just going to file these little things away, and in the right time, I'm going to start to understand them. So that was my first experience of starting to feel like I'm actually seeing something and beginning to understand.
Right. And it sounds to me, I mean, it's beautiful to listen to you. And it feels to me like this is, so much feels like a calling. Would you call it a purpose? Like this, people talk about exploring the potential that we have. So does it feel like you have been exploring your own potential? Is that what it feels like when you touched into this concept of clarity and inner peace?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I really tie it so much to a purpose.
Yeah.
I just, it's just, it's of interest to me. I find it very interesting. I also feel that during those years where, like I said, that I first began to have this opening of eyes, I was very interested in reading as many books as I could. And I wanted to tell everyone about it as well. Like I wanted others to feel and experience what I was feeling. But now if I fast forward, this is about 15 years later now. Yeah. It's not something that I feel so inclined to speak about anymore. It's almost, it's not necessarily that I want to keep it to myself, but I just don't feel the need to talk about it all the time or try to have other people feel necessarily the way that I feel. So I think I'm much more reserved with it now. But again, things come, in ebb and flow, and that could easily change in, tomorrow, a month from now. So I just like to honor what feels natural for me at this exact time. Yeah. And just kind of being a little quiet right now feels really where I need to be.
Yes. I love how the level of self-knowledge, what you're saying, that kind of reflects that's the message that you're sending me. Like, I know myself. And then you talk about being natural. That relates to nature, right, Jeff? You talk a lot about nature, being natural. And how do you feel about this idea of having, life having a goal, Jeff? Is there a goal to life? What are we doing here collectively?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. And I think, one of the things that I've been thinking about on this topic recently is, and I forget if we spoke about this before, but just, this idea that everything in life is on a pendulum, right? And it's just swinging back and forth. And so I was thinking just like a few weeks ago about goals. And it's so interesting because so often, we hear advice from other people and it's very unidirectional, right? Like it's sort of like trust in the process, right? Yes. Or have goals. You need to have goals, or could just be get lots of sleep, right? Like sleep's super important. But I just find that if you kind of look at nature, things in nature are constantly, rhythmic, right? So, you have night and day, and you have the seasons, and you have the revolutions of the planets, and you have, even in our biology, you have the circadian rhythm, and you have this, all sorts of rhythms, right, that are constantly happening. And so it's sort of like you're going from one extreme to the other. And so when I think of goals, I think that, yes, it's good to have goals. And then sometimes it's good to have no goals. And that could be the goal, right? To have no goals. And so, because if you're too goal focused, then you're not necessarily being in the present moment. You're not experiencing the nuances of what are around you. You're not sort of utilizing your senses to have the deepest experience you could in that moment. Right. And so if you have no goals, you can really get there. But then if you don't have any goals, then I think that you start to become it starts to weigh a toll on our mental health. If we don't have goals, we need to have some sort of purpose.
Yes.
And so, but not to say that goals equals purpose, because I think purpose can also be no goals, right? So it's
Yes.
so, but so
Yes.
I think that, if we step back and try to answer your question of what's the goal of what we're doing, it becomes, I think, a very personal thing, right? It's hard to define it, I think, for anything other than yourself. And I think when we start to think about it for ourselves, it, in many ways, I think, starts to become, related to our personal journeys and our self-evolution and the insights that we've gained and the cues that we've avoided sort of listening to. And then eventually we start listening to, and we realize that we're being guided, in a certain direction. And so in some ways, maybe the goal, and I think relates to a lot of the powerful things that Jessica just said, is clarity, right? To try to seek that clarity, to try to be open to the cues that are guiding us in our journeys. And because I think what we notice, right, when we do that, is we start to deepen our connections with other people. We start to become more comfortable in our own skin. We start to become more confident in who we are and in what our sort of superpowers are, and what we can bring to the world. And I think that, the goal is somewhere kind of wrapped in all of that.
Yes. So let's talk about, Pilates and lit. The power of Pilates. So the first question is a basic one. What is Pilates? And does it relate to yoga somehow?
Well, Pilates was created by a gentleman by the name of Joseph Pilates. Yes. And I believe originally when he created, he did take elements of several different movement modalities, yoga being one of them. But unlike yoga that has a bit of a religious, like a spiritual, Pilates does not. Pilates is purely for a workout.
Yeah. Okay, so it's very simple, and I've seen the machines, right? They are, what do you call them again? There's a name, specific name for them.
There's a whole host of apparatus. So we have mat Pilates, and then we have all the apparatus. The universal reformer, that might be what you're referring to. That's the one with the moving carriage. Yeah. And all the apparatus makes use of springs. There's a reformer, a Cadillac, a chair. There's a whole bunch of equipment.
I've seen it.
The interesting thing is that the apparatus was actually created to be able to eventually do the mat work. The mat work is the hardest because you have no support.
Right.
So you use the apparatus to one day, maybe one day not, improve your mat practice.
That's amazing. So is there a goal to it too? Is this just a maintenance?
Well, I would say that would be a personal question, depending. For myself, I view it solely as a practice. I don't have a goal.
Right.
I do Pilates every day. I have a fabulous, fabulous teacher that I get to do a group class via Zoom with 4 days a week. And it's my favorite hour of the day. My body just craves it. But every day I show up with the body that I show up with. Maybe I'm a little tired one day. Maybe one day I'm full of energy. And I honor that. And I can't emphasize enough the word practice. This is a practice, and it's going to be different every day. One of the signs and guiding feelings that I go by is I am truly never in pain of any sort. I knock on wood, have no injuries, no aches, no pains. I probably feel younger now than I did 20 years ago. Yes.
Gosh, that sounds really good.
Yes. No, I could go on and on.
Oh
Yes.
gosh, and you will, because I'll be asking you lots of questions. So when we do Pilates through Zoom, do we have to have a reformer in a house in order to do it, or the mat?
So you could absolutely do the mat work via Zoom. The group that I happen to be part of, most of us are instructors, teachers as well. And so we have the full apparatus, be it in our studio or our home. And it's amazing. It's wonderful. And there's people from all over the world. Usually I'm with a, similar group of people that I cycle through during the week. But again, my teacher is amazing. She can have all four of us. We can each be doing totally our own thing, and she can totally orchestrate everything.
Yes, gosh. So is that, would you say that Pilates is for everyone?
Pilates is for everyone. Absolutely. I mean, my daughter who's 15 does Pilates, and I have 80-year-olds that come to take classes at my studio. And one of really, I think my favorite thing, and just today I got to teach, I had 2 brand new private clients that I got to see. It brings me great joy when people come in to the studio and they tell me they have not exercised in years. And I just feel like when they step in to the space, I can just see they feel comfortable. Yeah. And then we have that hour together. And again, the machines are intimidating, and there's just this chemistry that happens. And I can see that they're feeling confident. They're feeling comfortable. And I feel like we're in this dance together. It's very like, it's hard to describe that feeling in words. I just came now from teaching someone for it was her first experience with Pilates. Wow. And you just get that feeling that they feel good. And I mean, what an amazing thing to call my job, that I get to experience that on a daily basis. And then it's a whole different dynamic when you go to teach a larger group and you have to keep everyone in sync and manage all of those energies, but you're like the one kind of holding it all together and orchestrating it. Yeah, it's really, I feel very, very, very fortunate to be able to do this.
Yes. So the name is very fitting, teacher. So I was thinking about instructor, but it's Pilates teacher. On your website you have that. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, there's a difference, right, between a teacher and an instructor. So I do think I refer to myself as a teacher because that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach, but more so than teach, I'm trying to instill a sense of personal empowerment. I really want the people that I work with and that I teach to be able to then go off on their own and truly develop an understanding of what is happening in their body, so that it's not just the 1 hour that we're working together, but they take what they learn and then they incorporate it into all the other hours that they're not in the studio. So that is so important to me, that it's teaching.
And it's not just limited to movement. We can apply this to life, the principles, right? Everything that you're teaching. And one of the things that really comes to me as something beautiful is that in order to be a teacher, we have to be a student. And it's beautiful to be student and teacher at the same time. And I see that in you, like, clearly.
I would not be able to teach and feel inspired if I wasn't a student. I think more than a teacher, what I would like to call myself, and actually what I feel I am, I would love a professional student. I cannot be without learning. If I'm not inspired on a daily basis, I can't bring anything. I can't bring anything to the people that want to learn from me. It would just feel totally flat for me.
Right. And you see, that's humility, isn't it? It's a big part of wisdom. So I saw that from the get-go to today with you. You mentioned learning a lot.
That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to learn all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Teach me.
Yes. That's beautiful. You see, if we go in life almost like, from a child's mind, right? Looking at everything, like you said, Jeff, beautifully, curiosity, see openness, being willing to be guided, to know what we don't know, or even drop what we think we know too. That's another one that's huge for humans, right? So do you want to make a comment about that, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I've done a little bit of Pilates here and there. And just sort of building on some of the things that Jess just said, I think one of the things that really strikes me, I mean, there's actually a few things that really sort of stood out. One is how when you're doing Pilates, you're getting multiple cues that you're trying to implement simultaneously. And you kind of look at like the amount of weight or like the elastic coils or whatever. And you kind of think like, this isn't very much, right? Like I got this, no problem. But when you really try to experience all the cues that you're getting, like if you're sort of tightening your lower abs and you're trying to push through your head, kind of straightening your body in a certain way. And then, your arms are out and you're trying to keep your arms straight and you're moving them all at the same time. It's so your attention you start to realize that you can't really focus your attention on all of these things simultaneously.
Right. Wow.
But through practice, you can actually do it all simultaneously. And to me, so it's like that kind of mind, it's even beyond mind-body connection. It's even just like a practice in focusing your attention. And so I find that, it's sort of, you're able to then wield your attention like a laser, right? The more you're able to do it and sort of bring that to other areas of your life. And then the other part I think that just really strikes me too is not that long ago I was a beginner and still a beginner, but I think you can tune into progress really quickly. And so, when you start to kind of being able to handle all these cues simultaneously, and you get one and then you get two, and as Jessica was saying, day by day, things are different. You show up differently to every session. So you're not always able to sort of manage the cues the same way every time. But then the interesting thing to me is that gives you a cue as to where you're at that day. Right. So it's almost like, we talk about getting cues from our minds, our bodies, from our interaction from other people. But I think, Pilates, you're actually getting cues from the Pilates as to your mental and physical state in that moment.
Wow. That's powerful. Would you actually say that's a form of meditation, Jessica, in a way?
I feel it. I feel it is. I mean, I don't have a separate meditation practice, but for those 55 minutes, there's no way that I can think of anything else than just being present. And I have a client who comes to see me every Friday morning, and she says the same thing. She's like, this is amazing. She goes, for this 1 hour that I'm here, she goes, it's like nothing else exists. Any problem that I had there's no space for that. I need to be, as Jeff said, laser focused, and you're just putting the attention on yourself. And yes, it's your hour for you.
Yeah, I never thought it that way. That's interesting.
And actually, something else came to mind.
Yeah.
So I've had my studio for 6 years, and when I first opened the studio, it was just myself. So I was working there 7 days a week, teaching all the group classes, and it it was pretty much turned out to be like the same people wanted to come over and over. So I would have the same, it happened to be women at the time, same 9 women coming every single day. And when the class would start, I noticed I would speak nonstop during the class. And at one point I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be speaking so much. Like maybe I need to leave some room for silence. And one of the women said, please keep speaking to us, because when you're speaking to us, it's helping us focus and you're guiding us. And they were saying that it felt meditative to them. So I just continue to speak to them the whole time and just guide them through this 55 minute session. And I guess they did feel as well like perhaps there was a meditative aspect to it.
Yeah, it sounds very much like it's a guided meditation. Do you still teach it the same way?
My teaching has evolved. It's definitely changed. My original certification was what we call contemporary Pilates. There's different schools of Pilates. Each one has its own wonderfulness built into it. And a few years ago, I decided that I was going to do what we call a classical certification. And I did. I fell in love with that. And I decided I can only teach classical now. And it's very, very recently that now I've started to think, okay, I can actually teach both.
Right.
Yes. So when I'm teaching out of my home, it's classical. But now when I teach at my studio, which I stopped teaching at for several years, I'm comfortable teaching the contemporary work again because I feel that I'm bringing a new perspective to it. Yeah. Everything I teach always has to make sense to me and have great purpose. So I have to be teaching exercises that I'm truly telling I understand the story behind the exercise and where it came from.
It may be good to define the difference between the contemporary.
I was about to ask. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Sure. Well, classical Pilates strictly adheres to the exercises created by Joseph Pilates. So they don't there's no creating your own exercises. Right. And then contemporary is, again, more of, you can create your own. You can create your own.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Whereas, yes, with the classical, it's all built on repetition as well, because we just adhere to those specific exercises. And I do for myself as well, my own body, I love repetition. I find that that's where the greatest growth and learning comes. It's by repeating and refining. And even if you can't, if there's an exercise, say, that like is just not coming to you, you can leave that exercise, and then you have all the different apparatus that you can work on to practice elements of that exercise. And then you can return in maybe 3 months, 4 months to try that other exercise again. And you can be blown away that suddenly you're able to do it.
Right. That's amazing. And how many exercises are there?
There is many, because there's so many apparatus.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's 34 mat exercises, but then there's over 500 with everything else. Yes.
Do you have to learn as a teacher? Do you have to learn all of them yourself?
You have to learn many of them. And then each school of Pilates, even though it's under the classical umbrella, they kind of tweak it. So sometimes they'll take out some exercises and then save those for more of like a continuing education course. But you do learn many of them. And then all of them have their specific spring settings. And there's a lot. There's a lot. But again, it comes over time. It can seem extremely overwhelming. But again, you're just, it's all a learning process. You're learning as you go.
Yes, I love that too. What's not to love about that? You learn as you go.
Learn.
So that you mentioned attention, right, Jeff, when it comes to Pilates. So there's a topic here. So it's one of the themes, Pilates for neurodiverse individuals, enhancing focus and self-regulation. So do you find that to be the case, Jessica? Your clients being ADHD or kind of fitting this description of neurodiverse?
Well, I would actually, the number one thing that comes to mind actually is our daughter who has ADHD, and surprisingly, she asks very often, can we do Pilates? And it holds her attention, which is very interesting.
Right.
So there must be some element within it that feels, I don't know if it's relaxing to her. It's hard for me to describe maybe what she's experiencing, but she clearly enjoys it.
She asks for that exercise specifically, Pilates, and other things.
Can we do Pilates? Can we? Yes.
I was just going to say, as someone, I openly identify as having ADHD and learning differences. And I would say that I think generally, it's a whole, there's no two people with ADHD that are the same, right? So there's like a whole spectrum. But in my experience, I think that a lot of people with ADHD require extra stimulation. Right. And that's where actually a lot of the medications like Ritalin and they're stimulants. Right. So that's how they kind of work, like Vyvanse and all these things. And I think what's happening with Pilates, from my personal experience, is that it's like multi-dimensional stimulation, because not only is your mind, as I mentioned before, you have like 3-4 cues that you're trying to adhere to simultaneously, but then you're also feeling like the tightness of your stomach muscles, squeezing, you're feeling the stretch through your neck and your head, and, you're feeling your arms reaching out. And so you have all these mental and physical cues that are happening simultaneously. And I think each one of those cues is like a stimulant, right? Like we're being stimulated by it. And so I think that it's, in some ways, it's sort of like this integration of the stimuli, the mental and the physical stimuli are all being integrated through Pilates. And so it's almost like, it's because otherwise I think that, and again, for me, my thoughts are bouncing around all day long, and, I'm tuning into all sorts of sensations in my body and stuff all day long. But almost like when you start doing Pilates, it's almost like you're being, there's like a conductor, the person leading it, and your body is like the orchestra, like there's like a whole rhythm to it and like a system, and you feel like you're in some sort of a flow state. And you're not sort of bouncing around, you know what I mean? Like you're part of the music.
I love that. It's a metaphor. Gosh, Jessica, you are the maestra. You're orchestrating all that. I love that. And I love the guided meditation kind of concept. Like some of your clients, they felt that way. Like, I like when you speak, because then you're guiding. That makes a lot of sense too. That's another kind of stimulation, right, Jeff? Now you have the physical, now you have all the sensory perceptions, you're stimulating everything. That's wonderful.
And you're constantly, I think the role of a teacher as well, you're bringing awareness to things that, like, for example, the session that I just came from today, it was interesting. I pointed out to my student, I'm like, are you aware, like, can you feel that every time you move your leg, your hip comes with you? And she was like, oh, yeah, I can feel that. And I was like, okay, now that you can sense that and you have that awareness, can you figure out how to keep your hip stable while you move your leg? And she was like, actually, yes, I can. But had someone not ever pointed that out to her, how would she have even known that that was available to her?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it's like you're just I feel like when I'm teaching, I'm just dropping little pieces of awareness.
Gosh, and that's body awareness. It's so important to have. I think I would be all over the place. Gosh, I got to try one of those because body awareness.
Body awareness. Yes. Where is your body in space? I mean,
that's a big one.
And we hear so much, right, about like awareness of our mind state.
Yes.
But you don't hear too much about body awareness, right? As being, and you'd think that, it would be equally as important and something that, and I think just some of the stories that Jessica's kind of brought home as well are really fascinating. Like, that you could have people who are doctors for many years and they have very minimal body awareness. And even just, what was it, like some people moving the ankles or
but it's so wonderful because again, you're opening up a window for them to be able to, again, learn something about themselves. I think it's fascinating. And again, for me, it's like so exciting that I can learn about how my own body moves.
Yes.
Why would I not want to understand that deeper and deeper and just keep peeling away more layers to figure it out? I mean, we're living in this body.
Right. God, that's a big one. I have heard before, if I can recall that correctly, because I lived in New York for a long time, and I remember having a lot of people around me from the NYU, teachers from there, and then somebody said that to me. Pilates is great because it helps with imbalances. They talked about imbalance all the time, and that for people who athletes, that was really important for athletes, or people who lift weights a lot, dancers.
For sure, like. The exercise that we usually start with on the reformers called footwork. So you have your feet up against the foot bar. And already right there, you start to sense, am I pressing more with my left leg than my right leg? I mean, everything. We have our feet in straps. We're holding on to handles. We can start to tune in to our dominant sides. And absolutely. That's huge.
That's another question I'm curious about. If there's a meaning, every time we move in a certain way or don't, is that something that, because there's body language, right? That's another whole topic. So is that something that you also communicate with your clients? Like do you Pilates go that far or deep when it comes to reading your body language and what is the meaning of that at the mental level, emotional, and perhaps spiritual, who knows?
Well, I don't know if this necessarily relates to your question per se, but one of the things you notice with a lot of people when they're exercising, right, is they tense, right away, tense.
Yeah.
And I've learned mostly from the teacher that I work with, my teacher now, there's really no use in saying to someone, okay, relax your shoulders, because this is all that they know how to do right now. So again, the first layer that we try to instill in our students is developing a sense of what does it mean? What does it feel like to have a lower abdominal connection? That's really the first place that you hone in on. And you let them hike their shoulders with every exercise that they do. And then it's so fascinating because as they move through their practice and they start to develop that sense of that lower abdominal connection, they suddenly realize they don't need that anymore. And it just, So that's the parallel that comes to mind in terms of that.
Another question. So the lower abdominal. So what does, I heard about Pilates in that, right? It kind of makes your core strong.
Yes. Right. A lot of people refer to it as the powerhouse, the center, the core. But what it really comes down to when we say moving from your center is, again, lower abdominal connection, and then also really those deep lower, like those deep spinal muscles. So from what I understand, as we've evolved, we've kind of lost that ability to be able to recruit that center before any movement we make, right? So it's like we're restoring that ability to be able to find that core connection before any movement we make, before we move our arm, before we move our leg.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. I'm very spiritual inclined, so I'm thinking about coming from the
so
center.
it's all from the center. Yeah, the number one cue that I learned from my current teacher is it's deepen your low abdominals and lift your lowest backbones. So those are her cues, and they're amazing.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I translate as coming from balance, a kind of a sense of equilibrium. So now we feel it's almost like before making a decision or doing anything in life, like coming from the place of knowing what you're doing, like being centered with your intuition, with your intention, with your purpose, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, it sounds, we could say like, if we're referring to Pilates, it's like being connected to your center, but that just resonates to life as well. And that's why for me, I'm like, Pilates for me, just, I don't know how it happened, but it just happens to be like my vehicle for understanding life in general.
How beautiful, Jessica. I love that. When we find anything within the natural world, this expression here that can resonate with our own inner being, that's just the most wonderful thing. Do you want to make a comment about that, Jeff?
No. I'm loving. I'm loving you guys are vibing. I love it.
Oh, gosh. So there are so many other themes here. So the body wisdom, we talked briefly about it. I mean, actually, we tapped into it already in self-discovery. So what movement teaches us about ourselves? You see, that's really core wisdom. Yeah, like core in a sense of, very essence, like basic wisdom. And, I really... I tried, because I was very spiritually inclined. I am very much now, but I'm trying to embody these things more, It's not easy. It's interesting because it's easy to live in our heads and kind of I'm in love with concepts. So I just stay there, and I love meditating, reflecting, contemplating. But when it comes to connecting that with the body, then it's not the same. And I try the yoga and I do it every day, but maybe Pilates will be a better practice. I'll look into it. I know you do by Zoom too. But then can beginners, Jessica, start on a mat, or do I have to get the reformer?
No, you can start on a mat for sure.
Gosh, yeah. That's an invitation. I feel invited.
Yes.
Actually, just to your question a moment ago, I mean, just something I'm thinking about now is it's sort of like, as Jessica was saying, there's such a focus in Pilates on the core, and I think that, and then you're saying that you love the metaphors and trying to embody, and to me, sort of connecting all those things together, it's sort of like, I think, and by the way, when you're doing Pilates and you're focusing on the core, it often is one of the most painful parts of Pilates, is because you're squeezing your core, and it's not necessarily like lasting for too long, but let's say when you're doing like the 100, and you have your arms out and your feet are out and you're trying to squeeze your core, it starts to burn pretty fast, right? And but then you sort of notice that you can get deeper and deeper as you go, right? Like you notice that sort of progression. And to me, there's sort of that metaphor of, as you were saying, like, the core wisdom, because we do have this inner core wisdom that is hard to access unless you have clarity, right? And sort of like, as you evolve more clarity, you can access more of that core wisdom. And my sense is that when you start to actually develop your core physically, you become more aware of that core being developed, right? So you can kind of like, you can flex your abs a bit more during the day, or when you're standing, you start to notice them more. But then that can also be a cue as to, continue on your path towards clarity so that you can access your core wisdom. So it's almost like you're working on something physical, but it's now being embodied as well within the sort of spiritual path.
Yes, 1,000,000,000%. That's how I see everything. And, I really question this thing about physical. I don't know if there's anything physical, really. Because when we really analyze, from the point of view of science, we see that they keep going deeper into what is the body made of. And in the end, there's nothing there almost like it's empty. Isn't it 90% empty, everything that composes the body?
True. Yeah.
So it's almost like there's, that's one of I question that a lot. And I think everything is spiritual.
Yeah, on that point, yeah, it's like I think what you're referring to is sort of like, we can look what we see is just sort of like, it's just like one level, but then you go down deeper and you get into the cells, and then you look at the cells are made up of molecules, and then what are molecules made up of? Well, you have like the atoms, but they're, like the all the atomic parts are a tiny percentage of what the molecule is. So most of a molecule is just nothing, actually. It's zero. It's like it's just empty, right? And so there's someone. I haven't sort of fact checked this calculation, but somebody's done some sort of calculation where if you take all the matter in the universe, all the sort of visible matter in the universe, so, all the stars and all the planets and everything. And if you were able to get all the subatomic particles like to actually touch, right, which is impossible, but if you could kind of get them all to touch and you squeezed it down, that it would be approximately 1 or 2 cubic city blocks would be like the entire universe. Now, that might be off by an order of magnitude or two, but still, but it would be a very, much smaller than you could have ever imagined. And I think, to your point, it's almost like, how could you not sort of, when you start thinking of these things, start to wonder about what's beyond what you can perceive?
Right. Yes. To me, it feels like I'm always working with the invisible world. It's never really something it's not exactly what I see with my eyes, anything. Well, we talked when we met first for the first conversation, Jeff, about I see everything as divine, everything as life itself, as the universe. There's nothing really that's separate. So it's interconnected. It's one essence. I cannot unsee that. I don't know. I can't explain it, but I can't unseen it. I can't really see it. I see everything as divine.
There's this I don't know if you ever looked at Alan Watts.
Yes.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of him recently, and he just asked this fundamental question of the most basic question that you can ask is kind of who am I? And when you ask that question, we often just give our name, but then you could say, okay, well, you could say you're a bunch of different body parts or different tissues, but then what about the microbiome, right? Like all the bacteria, they're part of you. And what about all the viral, there's parts of our DNA that are from viruses, right? And then what about the fact that, a meteor just came through and burned up and now we're breathing that in, and that's like incorporating into our body. So we're like part meteor, right? And like we're part, like what the food that we're about to eat, it's actually, gone through like many cycles of life, right? And so we're also that too, and we're the sun, and right, because it's sort of like when you start to look at it through that lens, it's hard not to think of, as you, I think, really nicely put it, that everything is really divine.
Yes, it really feels that way. And I heard recently somebody said, someone that I interviewed, he said, a mantra to say every time we wake up in the morning is, I am divine and that's enough. That resonated with me immediately, of course. Being enough, because it seems like we're always trying to become something or be something. And that sometimes causes so much trouble, right? Mental illnesses, so much unnecessary suffering from my point of view. Trying to always so hard to be something that's expected, perhaps even from society or our parents. So this is something I think we in an age now that they call the age of human evolution, with spiritual evolution, who knows? I like spiritual evolution better. That we are more open to these questions, Jeff and Jessica, like to ask deeper questions, even beyond who are we, but what are we? I like that question better. And I would love to start, the episodes like that. What are you instead of who are you? But then so many people just kind of not answer even.
Right.
So I don't do that.
Yeah. And also, just on your point about the enough, like I think that it's what, just in my sort of personal experience, I feel like I have had that, like, there's been like in some ways like a correlation between the more I work on myself and do the work and commit to self-evolution and really embracing the practices and the rituals and all these things, my expectations of others kind of melts away, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when I'm not doing the work, then I'm actually having expectations of other people. And I think that in society, there's a lot of people who aren't doing the work, right? And so there's a lot of expectations. And then the challenge is that when you exist in a world of that, and especially, if you're children and there's a lot of expectations on you, then you grow up never feeling enough, right? And then you have to find a way to sort of, how do you unhook from that? And then, that becomes challenging, but there is the path through your own self-evolution. So it's almost like as a way, it's like you can unhook from not being enough through your own self-evolution, but then also if the people around you start, embracing it as well, then they have less expectations. And so it's sort of, the duality of enough.
Oh, that would be amazing. What a beautiful vision, right? For this new reality that we all want to be here. Everybody kind of coming from that place. I am enough. That would change everything. I am divine and I am enough. Any comments, Jessica, about that?
Nothing really to add to that right now.
So in a way, it's like she's saying, it's enough.
I feel, I don't know, if we just jump quickly back to when you were speaking about goals.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that I have, my goal is I don't feel like have these goals that I'm trying to reach. And for some reason that the word enough and goals, I feel like there's some intertwinement over there. I do resonate with the trust in the process, because if I look back to the experiences that I've had and even the dots that I currently see connecting of seeds that I've planted in the last years, everything divinely connects. Therefore, I don't feel that I have to have this goal in mind, because I do have a sense that I do trust in the process. And I think that over time, I've began to understand that even if things don't work out or connect in the way that I thought they were going to connect at the time that I thought they were going to connect, I feel a sense of comfort and trust knowing that that's happening for my greater good and for the greater good of all. So that was my explanation for the word enough.
So that's almost like coming from a place of freedom itself.
Well, I mean, what greater, maybe that's the goal, is freedom.
Yeah.
The goal is freedom. Freedom. I mean, what better, to me, that word just brings a sense of,
Yeah. And you're coming from that place, the way you speak. We're almost at the end. And it has been amazing talking to you both. Being in your presence is just beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I do this not in a religious ways. This is almost like honoring what is there, that we're all interconnected and that divine is everywhere. So for some reason, that kind of resonates, putting my hands like this. So, but it's not a religious thing. And is there anything else that, like, spontaneously, that you feel that we didn't talk about that was meant to be here in this conversation, Jessica, about Pilates specifically?
No, I feel we covered good ground.
Gosh, I could talk to you forever about this. It's a timing thing, but I could just go on and on and on. So let me see at the end. I want to mention again. So Jeff's book, Lit Life Ignition Tools, use nature's playbook to energize your brain, spark ideas, and ignite action. It's on Amazon, so it can be found there. The link will be clickable. Jessica's website, it's passionandpilates.com, will be also clickable on the podcast notes. Jeff's website, jeffkarp.com as well. Yeah. Regarding the services, Jessica, talk to me for a moment about that. So you offer Pilates, the classes online, offline.
Yeah, so we don't do online classes. We're just in studio. So we have small group classes at the studio as well as personal private training sessions. And then I also have the separate practice at my home where I see private clients.
Wonderful. Yeah. And the location is?
And we're in Brookline, Massachusetts.
Okay, so that's wonderful to know too. I'll have this on the podcast notes as well.
Yeah.
And you also teach, right? You teach Pilates at Passion. Do you teach other people to become instructors if they want to?
I'm actually I'm on my path to do that as well. So we'll see where that takes me. But yes, I'm currently studying to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, it's almost like setting goals and being free to have this creativity and do as much as we can, but also being flexible enough to let it be what it's supposed to be.
Yes. It again goes back to how you said control. Like it came into my path. There was no reason to not step into it. And then it's just a process of like being fluid and seeing where it takes you. And as long as you're enjoying the process, there would be no reason to not continue.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you for saying that too. Right. Jeff, is there anything that you left unsaid? Anything?
Yeah. The only thing I didn't say is that Jessica's actually featured in Lit, the book, as well.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
So good to know.
And Jessica in there and some stories. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful to know.
About Pilates. Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't know that. Good. Yeah. Thank you for letting me know. So the book, it's on Amazon, also on your website. So thank you so much again for both of you. Gosh, what a beautiful partnership in life. Wisdom, being guided by divine energies, letting life flow, intelligence, gratitude, kindness, love. That's just a ball of goodness. Thank you. I can imagine like you with your children too. So passing this on, because that's, I don't really like the word legacy, but it's really passing on this movement, this gentle ripple, this perfume really of wisdom and love. So thank you for being you, for being true to your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh gosh, thank you. And before we say goodbye, the only question, I usually ask this question at the very end. What 3 things you wish everyone to know, to experience, or to have before they lose the body, before they die?
Well, I'm going to go with some of the words that we spoke about. Freedom, clarity, and feeling like they're enough.
Yes. What about you, Jeff? That's beautiful.
Well, I would say what Jessica just said, I feel like is like so powerful. I feel like that's probably a really good place to end.
Yes. Oh, I love that too. Beautiful. Yeah. So take good care of your beautiful selves and we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again.
All right.
Bye for now,
Jeff
and Jessica.
Yeah, thank you.
you.